This here is the MS Estonia. It's a passenger ferry. It's a model of the ferry. And on September 28th, 1994, it sank in the Baltic Sea. And this was one of the worst maritime disasters during peacetime in Europe because no less than 852 people died. There were a total of 989 people on board. And this means there were only 137 survivors. And after this happened, the conspiracy theories, they just flourished. What happened in reality, this is called the front visor of the ship can be lowered for cars to go in and out. And this actually broke off because of heavy seas. It was a little bit stormy. There were waves, of course, and there was a mechanical failure. And then it broke off, and this caused the water to rush into the ferry, and it sank in a very short time. I actually have a larger picture of this. Here you can see the front part, which was recovered, and this part actually was responsible for the sinking, but many people were not satisfied with that, and they actually thought that the ship sank because of sabotage, right? So I remember quite well at that time a friend of mine, she was from Estonia. And I met her and I asked her then, so what's going on now in Estonia with this accident here? How is the public responding to it? She kind of really almost covered her face with her hands and says, please don't even get me started on that. I cannot hear it anymore because every day we have a new conspiracy theory of what happened. Every day we have a new conspiracy theory, and it's just everyone's confused and the people are just fed up with the whole thing already, right? So let's explore this a little bit. Which conspiracy theories actually did appear and what's going on here, and also what mistakes did some of the governments actually make in the communication. Well, there were immediately after this happened, there were several conspiracy theories, and one of the big ones was, of course, this was not just only a normal transport, but actually there were some secret military weapons on board, and which should not have reached the destination because the ferry went from Tallinn in Estonia to Stockholm, and it should not arrive there. Therefore, it was sabotaged and was deliberately sunk. Right, so that is was immediately one of the conspiracy theories. Another one said is, well, actually it crashed into a submarine and therefore it kind of sank. Then another one said it was sabotaged because there were some inconsistencies in the passenger list, so some spying things and agents and whatnot, and that's why it was deliberately sunk. And as a matter of fact, it was the Swedish government who added more controversy to the whole thing, because someone there actually proposed, let's cover the whole ferry, the whole boat on the ground with concrete to prevent divers from looting souvenirs, so to say, and from the media to make pictures of the dead bodies and so on. So let's convert the whole thing into a graveyard, and this was ultimately done. Contracts were signed, but before that was done, it was actually proposed by some people, let's cover the whole thing in concrete so that nobody can actually reach the boat. And this was not a good idea to have made that suggestion, because immediately people said, why do you want to cover the whole thing in concrete? Do you want to cover up something, right? So this was seen as a proof that there was indeed something to be covered up. And then other people said, well, the reason why you want to cover it with concrete is to prevent radioactivity from escaping, right? Because there was some, as we said, some secret military stuff on there and some radioactivity. And in order to contain that radioactivity, that's why you want to pour concrete over the whole thing. You see, it doesn't matter what you do. Immediately it kind of fuels this conspiracy theory. So ultimately, this idea of pouring concrete over the ship, which is actually also wouldn't have made a lot of sense anyway, was actually abandoned. And this would not have been a usual thing anyway to do, right? But it was simply, unusual proposals, maybe done by some people who didn't know better. I mean, maybe just some politician or whatever just floated that idea and it was immediately picked up. I don't know, right? But apparently, indeed, there were some measures already taken to actually cover the whole boat with concrete. So you see, this was not a good thing. And another thing is unclear communications, maybe in the first uncertainty. All of these things kind of added up and caused the conspiracy theories to be spread more and more. However, let's analyze the whole thing a little bit from a historical context. You have to understand that back in 1991, This was only 3 years before the sinking of the ferry. Estonia became an independent state, before it was part of the Soviet Union. And this actually means that many people, rightly so, were very suspicious and skeptical of the government, because they knew that essentially the Soviet government was known to cover up things a lot and were not open about public discussing accidents. Yeah, so they knew about that. So they were actually maybe rightly to be suspicious that essentially there's going to be a cover up, right? So the general population already expected something, some cover up to happen. That could have been one reason why this was actually so many conspiracy theories appeared. As another reason there were actually 3 countries involved: Sweden, which was the destination of the ferry, then Estonia, and also Finland. And this was basically they had to negotiate and sign a treaty about protecting the boat, and they had to also the salvaging of the vessel and so on. So there was also some international uncertainty going on here. And Estonia, being a fairly young country, maybe might have felt a little bit intimidated by the more established democracies of Sweden and Finland at that time, and maybe also the procedures were not quite in place yet. So there was also some kind of a suspicion there. And then, of course, being a very young state, many of the institutions were not there yet, and in Estonia, and therefore maybe there was general public distrust in institutions at that time. So you see, it was also a politically and also historically difficult time. However, that's not the only thing, because also other reasons were that essentially unclear communication from the side of the government also started to fuel these things. And that's a very difficult thing, is because on one hand, you expect, of course, governments to be very open about the status and the situation. But if they're too fast and too open, and then they have to retract again some of the information that they released, then this also doesn't make a very good impression, right? So it's a very difficult thing. Release too much information at the beginning, then maybe you have to take some of it back, which fuels controversy and skepticism. If you don't release all of the information, if you say, okay, let's only release it when we have certain information available, then this is interpreted as a cover-up, right? So difficult, right? Just what I just want to say at the end is that this is, I don't know, it's difficult, because you see, I understand that people want to have, who've lost loved ones, right? Family members, they want to have they want to know what happened, right? I mean, it's totally understandable. And sometimes as well, if you just say, well, it was a mechanical failure, that's pretty I don't know, pretty lame. It might sound as a pretty lame excuse almost, it's just a mechanical failure. That's it, really? Just a mechanical failure can actually cause something like that? I mean, 900 lives lost, right? It's kind of this mismatch between the losses on one hand and a fairly, I don't know, a material failure, right? And this emotion doesn't sit well emotionally with some people as well. So this might also have been a contributing factor. Yeah, in any case, large loss of human lives, very sad. And I think what we can do as that's my view about this is we gotta try the best not to kind of push theories or conspiracies for the sake of pushing them, and especially at that time, back in the 90s, this was just before the internet actually became very public. I mean, even at that time in the media, lots of these conspiracy theories were pushed. So it's not something that essentially was, you don't need social media for that, right? Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. Please, I'd like to hear your own view about that. That's why there is a comment section below. Wish you a nice day. Bye-bye.